Welcome to the 15th episode of 2 Cents Tuesday. Today, I want to look at how our population is changing and what this means for us as a country. Over the past 60 years, our country has experienced a dramatic shift in the makeup of its population. When planners want to study the way a country's population is progressing, they usually look at a population pyramid. This is a graph that tells us how a population is distributed according to age and sex. The classic graph usually takes the shape of a pyramid. The percentages of males in the various age groups are shown on the left, and the percentages of females on the right. The lowermost line shows the youngest members of the population, usually those between the ages of birth and 4 years old. The highest line shows the oldest members of the population, those who are older than 75 or 80 years of age, depending on the data. The graph gets its pyramid shape because usually the largest percentages of people in the population are those up to the age of 4 years old. And the percentages decline gradually as the age range increases. In St. Lucia, in the 1960s, our population was almost the shape of a classic pyramid. The largest age group by percentage was those up to 4 years old, at 8% each for boys and girls, followed by those between the ages of 5 and 9 years, then 10 and 14, then 15 and 19. In other words, the higher we go up the pyramid, the older the population, and the smaller the percentages. The 1960 graph also shows that while we started off with roughly equal numbers of males and females between birth and 4 years old, with the boys actually slightly outnumbering the girls in 1960, and that is up to the age of 14, from that point onwards, the females steadily outnumber the males, with the differences becoming more pronounced in the older age groups. St. Lucia's population pyramid in the 1970s and 1980s looks roughly similar to how it looked in 1960, although we started to see smaller than expected percentages for males in the age ranges between 20 and 44 years old. However, in 1990, we started to see a shift in the distribution of St. Lucia's population. The age range of birth to 4 years old, which in all the previous decades had been the one with the largest percentage, is actually smaller than the 5 to 9 and 10 to 14 age ranges. Clearly, our birth rate in St. Lucia had changed by 1990. The numbers clearly show this. Whereas in each of the previous 3 decades, the group between birth and 4 years old accounted for over 8% of our total population of the respective sexes, or 16% in total. By 1990, for both boys and girls, this age group made up a little less than 6% of the population of the respective sexes, or 12% of the total population. By the time 2000 came around, our population pyramid had started to look less like a pyramid. The trend we had observed in 1990 had continued, and our pyramid was beginning to resemble what population statisticians call a stationary pyramid, which is characterized by low fertility, high life expectancy, slow population growth, and the numbers of juveniles roughly equal to the numbers of adults in the society. 10 years later, in 2010, the population graph looked more like a bowling pin, for those of you who are familiar with a bowling pin. The classic pyramid shape had all but disappeared. The largest age group by numbers and percentage in our society was the teenagers, those between the ages of 15 and 19 years old. And the percentages of male and female children between the ages of birth and 4 years old had dropped to a little over 3% each. Remember, in 1960, this number was well over 8% for each sex. The most recent data that I was able to get from the website of the Department of Statistics is for 2018. And as expected, the trend witnessed in 2010 has become even more pronounced. The largest population groups in our country are those between 20 and 24, and 25 and 29. The age group of birth to 4 years old and 5 to 9 years old each represent 6% of our total population, with the numbers shared equally by boys and girls in those age ranges. What is also interesting to note is that the percentage of older citizens in our population, that is those who are past the age of 65, which is the age of retirement in St. Lucia, increased from 4.8% in 1960 to 9% in 2018. I point out all of this to show that over the past 6 decades, our population has changed dramatically. It has gotten older. This has serious implications for our national development and for the National Insurance Corporation and our pension funds that are held by the NIC. However, before I delve a little deeper into what this means, I need to point out that while this population shift has taken place, something else has also happened. We have become progressively more overweight and obese, and with this has come a significant increase in the prevalence of chronic non-communicable diseases like diabetes, cardiovascular disease such as heart attacks and stroke, cancers, and chronic respiratory disease such as chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD as we more popularly know it. So, although we may be living longer, this does not mean that these older years are generally healthy years. The Caribbean Public Health Agency, or CARPHA, has found that from the age of 40, non-communicable diseases account for over 50% of all deaths in the Caribbean, with this figure increasing to over 80% after the age of 55. The Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, in a study that was conducted in 2016, found that the probability of a 30-year-old dying from one of the 4 main non-communicable diseases before his or her 70th birthday in the 8 subregions of the Americas was the highest in the English-speaking Caribbean at roughly 18%. In other words, 2 out of every 11 30-year-old citizens from the CARICOM region will die from a non-communicable disease before they reach the age of 70. That's not a good statistic. So in St. Lucia, our birth rate has fallen, our population is getting older, we have a higher percentage of retirees in our population, but our older population has a higher likelihood of suffering from a non-communicable disease. Fortunately, the bulk of our population is presently in the middle section of what used to be our pyramid. That is between the ages of 20 and 54 years. This means that the percentage of our population that is potentially economically active or of working age is high. The economically active are the ones who pay the majority of the taxes collected by the government, and also they're the ones who make the pension payments into the National Insurance Corporation. However, unless our fertility or birth rate improves at some point in the near future, it will not always be this way. In 20 to 30 years, most of the current economically active members of our population will retire, and they will swell the ranks of the over 65s. Therefore, by the year 2050, our population graph will look more like an inverted pyramid or an upside down pyramid than the classic shape we saw in the 1960s. Also, if we do not change our lifestyles and start to eat healthier and exercise more often, the prevalence of non-communicable diseases in our population will continue to increase. And in a population that has even larger numbers of older people, this will be a burden that neither the state nor our national insurance system will be able to afford. So, there are a few things that we need to do to prevent this fate from befalling us. We have to maximize the earning potential of our working age population so that they can make the contributions to the NIC that we will need to ensure its viability in the future. The NIC needs to start an aggressive and sustained campaign to increase the pool of its contributors, particularly from people in the informal sectors, self-employed people, and workers in the creative sector and the digital economy who normally do not see the need to contribute to the NIC and do not contribute to the NIC. Equally importantly, we need to start living healthier lives. This means eating better, cutting out the high levels of salt, sugar, and saturated fat in our diet. Government can also play a part here by introducing a tax on sugar-sweetened beverages like soft drinks and allocating the funds that are collected from this tax directly to a fund for universal health care. This has been found to be quite effective in other countries. Also, we need to exercise more. This means committing to walking, cycling, swimming, going to the gym, or some form of sustained physical activity to the point where every week we get to spend 2.5 hours in moderate exercise. We live in a country where it is always warm and the outside environment is beautiful. 30 minutes of walking a day is all that it would take for us to improve our health dramatically. Hopefully, the national census that will be conducted later this year will add more clarity to these numbers. But even without the 2022 census, I think it is very clear what we need to do. Thank you for watching another 2 Cents Tuesday. Have a safe and productive week. And remember, eat healthier and exercise more often. Goodbye.